week into the season, the Rangers look good on their opening road trip, and today is the home opener. Welcome to this week's episode of SportsDay Rangers. I'm John Blake.
And I'm Evan Grant.
And Evan, the Rangers go 4-2 on a season opening road trip to Philadelphia and Baltimore, two teams expected to contend for postseason play this year. Both losses were started by Nathan Eovaldi, which I'm sure doesn't worry a lot of people. And this podcast is coming out today, Friday, April 3rd, when the Rangers will open their 55th home opener in Arlington.
Baseball has the best opening day in sports, John. There's just no doubt about it. It's always a great day, no matter where you are. It's amazing. We had got to Philly. It was kind of chilly on Wednesday, on Thursday. Beautiful day, absolutely beautiful day in the 70s, and then it deteriorated for the next 2 days. It's like it's like God wants nice weather on opening day.
And you have a big patriotism theme, right, for the Phillies opener with America 250 on the horizon?
Well, this is the I'm not even going to try and pronounce semi-quincentennial, but yes, this is 250, right? And Philadelphia was the bicentennial city, and obviously the city of our nation's founding, and the All-Star game is going to be there this year, just as it was in 1976. And so we had, the Fanatic was decked out in revolutionary gear. He had his own little fife and drum corps. They had a fife and drum corps come out and play before the game. I love that stuff about Philly. It's always been one of my favorite things. I'm a big fan of the movie 1776 and the play 1776, and so that always brings warm feelings to me when you see those guys in revolutionary gear. I wish they would have had somebody dressed as John Adams come out and throw out the first pitch. But instead, John, we got a group of 1976 Phillies. Larry Bowa looked great. Mike Schmidt looks fantastic. Larry Bowa is in uniform there. He's like hitting ground balls before games. He's 80 years old, looks great. Mike Schmidt looks great. Greg Luzinski was there. He was on a cane, which was a little bit sad for me to see. And then they had, and then they also, the Phillies also hosted the 96 All-Star game, which was the first All-Star game I ever covered because the Marlins, which I was covering at that point in time, were in Philly that weekend, and so I stayed over and covered the game. It was also the weekend the Marlins fired my buddy Renee Latchman as manager while we were in Philly, so it was a very eventful few days. But they also brought out Ricky Bottalico, who was on the 96 All-Star team. It kind of a drop-off, I think, when you go from Schmidt, Luzinski, Bowa down to Ricky Bottalico.
Speaking of that, Evan, can you name the Texas Ranger that was on the 1996 All-Star team in Philadelphia?
Yes, I believe I can. I believe that would be Roger Pavlik.
Very good. And speaking of 1996, the Rangers are going to honor that team later this season, the 30th anniversary, and we're looking forward to that. And our guest this week is Rangers Hall of Famer Michael Young, always a great guest. He was actually our first guest ever on this podcast last season.
Bottom of the ninth, bases loaded. Here comes Jimmy Dale from Baker Brothers Plumbing, AC, and Electrical.
Thanks, Chuck. When your home pitches curveballs, Baker Brothers knocks it out of the park.
Home run, Baker Brothers. Incredible.
As the official home service partner of your Texas Rangers, we're offering $300 off a tank or tankless water heater.
Another winning call. Visit callbakernow.com or dial 214-342-1171 today.
Great service.
But right now, we're looking forward to talking about the opening road trip. So what were your takeaways from that 4-2 trip?
Yeah, John, it was, for me, it was a case of seeing a team that really looked a lot different than last year. They played with energy that we didn't seem like we saw last year. They did things on the bases that were really impressive. Not just talking about stealing bases. They ran the bases aggressively and made things happen. From Kyle Higashioka and Brandon Nimmo breaking up double plays that turned into run-scoring rallies, to moving up behind runners in situations, to a contact play that was textbook and helped optimize a big inning. So I was impressed with their attention to detail throughout that first series in Philadelphia and as well in Baltimore. They scrambled well after the Jacob deGrom scratch, and you've got kind of a shaky bullpen, or at least that's the general perception. Now you've got to take Jacob Latz out of that bullpen for several days. You're holding Kamar Rocker back, so your bullpen is a little bit thin, but I thought the bullpen did a good job. I just don't know that we have roles yet in the bullpen. I think the bullpen arms are still waiting to see what those roles are. But those were really the big takeaways for me, that I just felt like this team looks like it's having fun, it's executing, and it is playing an aggressive style of baseball that I expected would be the case with Skip Schumacher.
And fun seems to be the optimal word here, which you've used. You wrote a whole column about that. But it starts kind of at the top of the lineup, right, with Brandon Nimmo and what he's been able to do early on. And again, 6 games is 6 games. And you mentioned that, I think this came out about the 1992 team that had that, we swept the Mariners in Seattle and we were all giddy. And we ended up firing our manager,
by the middle of June, right?
Middle of June, yeah. So, but he does seem to bring something to the top of the lineup. Energy, be able to make contact, but he's got power. And it really does kind of set the table for that at the beginning of the order.
It does. I mean, the at-bats are really professional, and I think that, it is a case of a lot of guys are seeing that and seeing results from it and are much more willing to stick with the process. I think it's been a good, not that Evan Carter needs a model. I don't want to make Evan Carter anybody's puppy dog, right? I think he's a really disciplined hitter, but I do think that Brandon Nimmo has been good for Evan Carter. And I do think it's good to see somebody that has a similar style of play to yours kind of play things out and be successful. And I think they have had a good rapport. I think, you look at the at-bats that Andrew McCutchen has turned in. And listen, Andrew McCutchen was not part of the plan at all during the offseason. And sometimes...
Or even early in spring, in the first 2/3 of spring training,
Right. But and I'm just talking about the overarching theme of we're going to have better at-bats and a better plan. And he's come in here and he's had that. And I think that just further emphasizes for the rest of the team. And it also, the more guys you end up in your lineup that have that kind of same approach, if you are a disciplined, work the pitcher hard, grind it out kind of team, you've got to have guys in that lineup pretty much 1 through 9. You can get by with one guy maybe who's super, super aggressive, but you've got to have one guy after another go up there and grind it out. And I think we saw that in a couple of wins on this road trip.
And the long ball was back, too. And, again, we don't know how Globe Life Field will play this year. I mean, there was a lot of talk about that. But in a situation where the team did not perform well offensively on the road last year, they were able to mix the long ball in, which was a key part of that of the success on this trip.
Well, the long ball is always a part of the Rangers' lore, and it was certainly absent last year. And listen, I think that's another element of what made this kind of a feel-good road trip. You look at the 3 guys in the order who have basically replaced guys who didn't perform last year, right? Nimmo was traded for Simeon. Danny Jansen was the big free agent sign, and obviously McCutchen comes in and is ultimately, let's just swap it out for Adolis Garcia, right? Those are all 3 guys who had less than 700 OPSs. Jansen replaces Jonah Heim behind the plate. All 3 of those guys had big home runs over the course of that first week. All of them contributed. And I think that was important for this team too, to further kind of bond everybody that, hey, the newcomers have stepped right in and made a positive impact.
Let's talk about the pitching a little bit. I don't think anybody's really too concerned over Nathan Eovaldi. He just seems to be having trouble with location here in his first 2 starts, which is a little bit of a carryover from spring training, but nothing to be real concerned about, right?
I'm not going to be concerned over Nathan Eovaldi after 2 outings. I do think that he's the one consistency is he's left some pitches up, and that has led to a number of 2-out hits, and that has extended some innings, and that's what's really done him in. I don't think that's going to be a long-term issue for him. And I will, since I'm Mr. Glass half full, I will point out that there was another situation once before where Eovaldi gave up 5 runs or more in a game in consecutive starts for the Rangers. That was the last 2 starts of the 2023 regular season. Seemed to figure it out okay after that.
Correct. What about, you mentioned the bullpen at the top. Their innings, if you look at the innings, it's not a lot, but a lot of work in those first 6 games. And again, you mentioned, the DeGrom, Latz having to fill in, kind of put it off, and Kumar Rocker not making a start now until the 8th game of the season. So, again, roles not defined.
No, there aren't any rules defined. I mean, who had Tyler Alexander as being the leader in the clubhouse with 2 saves a week into the season? Guys have scrambled really well, and I think guys are still searching for things to understand exactly what their role is. But they also, they knew a game into the season that there was going to be some scrambling around. Cole Winn has been really good his first couple times out. Jacob Junis has been really good his first couple times out. I was surprised to see Chris Martin used as much as he was in the road trip, but on the 3rd outing in 4 days, man, his fastball was 95. He said he felt better than he has in a long time, and I think the idea that he's going to be available on back-to-back days would really change the dynamic in the bullpen, because I don't know that I was convinced going into the season based off of last year, and with Chris Martin about to turn 40 in June, I don't know that I was really optimistic that this was a guy you could run out there consistently as a closer.
Well, will be a big homestand here, 3 with the Cincinnati Reds, and then an early season test with the Mariners, and it should be a lot of fun. And again, we'll get a chance to see how the ballpark plays a little bit this year, which was such a topic of conversation in 2025.
It was, because the long ball was gone, right? And because this team was so hyped up to slug, I think that one way that you can make the ballpark not seem like it's such a pitcher-friendly park is if you're more able to score runs in different manners. And that's what I think we've seen from the Rangers this year. On Wednesday in Baltimore, the Rangers had 4 consecutive 2-out singles in their run-scoring inning. And I went back and I checked, and they haven't had 4 consecutive hits with 2 outs in an inning. I think they had that 4 times all of last year. I mean, we're just seeing some early, we're seeing some early season signs that this offense has different capabilities than it did a year ago.
And finally, the well-ballyhooed ABS system that former umpires are weighing in on, and we'll get a chance to ask our guest about this a little bit in a little while. Game-ending call on Wednesday. What were your early impressions in terms of the Rangers?
Well, really anticlimactic history that the Rangers made on Wednesday, right? Being the first team to have a game end on an overturned ABS call. But I do think, there is some concern. You get a game that's a really high leverage game late in the season where we're not talking about a 5-run game. We're talking about a game where maybe a flipped third strike becomes a walk-off walk at that point in time, those are things that do concern baseball a little bit. But I talked to a couple of players after the game yesterday, and I think, their general feeling was, here's the deal. We will, if we have a walk-off, a game that ends on a walk-off overturned call, we'll at least know that it was right. We'll at least know that they got the call right. So I think ABS has gone great so far, unless, of course, you're CB Buckner, who has really kind of taken some heat. And I think
a foul ball to the mask, unfortunately, too. So.
Yeah, it's been a rough first week for him. He had a bad call at first base. And I think that we'll talk with Michael Young more about all of that, but I do think it's the umpires, and we'll get Michael's thoughts on this, but I think it's important for the umpires to look at ABS not as an attempt to embarrass them, though I know fans will will hop onto that, but it's more of an attempt to be a resource and a tool to make sure we just get everything right. And if you've looked at the missed calls, John, by and large, we're talking about decimal points of an inch. We're talking about a half of a half of an inch.
It's unbelievable.
So we're talking about a quarter of an inch off the plate. And I think that it's also underscores how hard this is to do for umpires. So I'd like to see baseball further support them and explain that, look, this is a tool to help them and not something because they're bad at their jobs. But I also think it's incumbent upon the umpires, and this will be a subject of our conversation with Michael, to handle the situation and not feel like it's a personal attack on them.
Well, also on this week's episode of SportsDay Rangers, the Archives in Arlington, we're going to talk about Nelson Cruz's hot start to the 2011 season and a little bit about his legacy. But next, we're going to talk to Ranger Hall of Famer Michael Young, who's come off a great run at the World Baseball Classic as Mark DeRosa's bench coach. And we'll also talk to him, obviously, about this year's team and about this new ABS system. And we will talk to Michael next. Well, our guest on this week's SportsDay Rangers podcast is Michael Young, and Mike was actually the first guest ever on this podcast last year, and somehow we've made it to episode 32. And we thought it would be appropriate to have Michael on again. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, John. I'll do anything for you, John. In spite of Evan being here, I'm happy to be the first repeat appearance on this show.
You are not the first repeat appearance on this show. Let's just be very clear here. Ian Kinsler, my favorite Ranger of all time,
yes,
did join us last week. But
yeah, I wanted to have you first, but Evan insisted we had Ian first as the first repeat. Yeah. So anyway, let's obviously we won't talk about the Rangers and hot start in Philly this past weekend, but let's dive into the WBC first and just what kind of experience. I saw you last week when you were here, and you were still, the experience is something you said it was amazing, right, over the last month.
It's incredible. It really is. I think that the game has done such a good job of making this thing better and better every single time. It is a complete it's an emotional roller coaster. It's a complete electric factory while you're there. And it's really difficult to compare it to the season. The players are constantly asked the question of, what's more important, winning the WBC or winning the World Series. I think anyone with a clear mind says that winning the World Series is clearly more important, but I just don't see the need or the importance of even comparing the two. They're two completely different things. I think they can both be appreciated for what they are. I think all the players take a ton of pride in representing their countries and playing for something that they typically don't get a chance to do. So it really was incredible. The players were fantastic. The buy-in was great, and top to bottom, the experience was just awesome.
Hey, you played in the first WBC. You were on the staff in 23, and obviously part of an even bigger part of the staff this year. Not quite running the team the way you phrased it to me, but part of the staff. I think that your takes on just how much the players have bought in and how that has evolved, are significant. How much more do you see players being engaged and interested in this?
Yeah, I think it's slowly picked up momentum. And I think with the backdrop of the Olympics kind of looming, I think a lot of players, particularly the American players, have really kind of, gotten super excited about tournament baseball. And I think, this year, D-Rod did such an incredible job. The first thing that he did was got Skeens on board. We never really had that before. So to have someone like Paul Skeens really, really be excited about it, be sort of, the figurative and literal kind of flag bearer for this event on the American side was important. We never really had frontline pitching before. And I don't think there was any coincidence that, Skubal responded right after that and he got on board. So if the American side can continue to do this and get top level pitching, we've never had a problem with position players wanting to play. But if we can get, our top level pitching involved, it really does make the event better.
I know one thing that really kind of, I think, annoyed you a little bit is you guys got trashed in some media for not having enough fun. And I think you and I have talked a little bit about this. The Latin American teams were very joyous in how they played the game, very demonstrative. I feel like the Americans are in kind of a no-win situation, because if you don't win, we're going to find a reason to blame you for not winning. Did you feel like you were in kind of a no-win situation, that no matter what you guys did, no matter what approach you took as a team, it was win or else it's a failure?
Yeah, 100%. And that part of it's okay. Win or failure is okay. What I didn't like was them taking shots at our style of play and how much we cared. That is ridiculous and unfair. There's a lot of layers to this. I think the first thing I'll start with is, again, kind of like the WBC and World Series. There's no need to compare. You know, you look at the players from the Dominican Republic and from Venezuela. They are loaded teams, right? And I think that it's a good opportunity for people to appreciate what they've done in their lives. These are guys that sign at 16 years old. They leave their country. They come to ours. They learn a new language. They have to do a lot of things to assimilate into our culture. And then if they get to the big leagues, they hear our anthem every day, or the Canadian one. And this is their opportunity now for the first time to hear their anthem in a big league ballpark. And in the case of us against the DR or Venezuela, in front of a real home crowd. I can't imagine the feelings they have doing that. It has to be absolutely incredible for them. For us, yes, our players took a ton of pride in it. They took a ton of joy in representing their country, but it's, we hear our anthem all the time in our ballparks in our country. So I think it's just different. And I hate, you can compare, but I hate the comparison where one is better than the other or one is less than the other. I think it's just ridiculous. I think this should be a massive celebration. And to go even a step further regarding how we played during the game, our offense, I was with them every day. They grinded every day to get going. We never really started clicking offensively. But you look at every time we did hit a homer, our dugout cleared and they went crazy because it was kind of just a weight off our shoulders. But otherwise, you're not going to have our team clearing the dugout for walks. And that's what we were doing. The Dominicans are clearing the dugout going crazy. They're going deep 6 times a game. Of course they're going crazy. They were on fire the whole tournament. And props to them for that. But again, if you're going to really be super critical, I wish that the criticism would at least be fair and rooted in some level of, watching the game and understanding what our players are going through. So that was my only thing where I thought that was a little unnecessary to have us playing the villain.
But you also came back in both the semifinals, and you guys got down. The other, both the DR and Venezuela scored first, and you guys came back in both games. So to me, that kind of negates that this team didn't, they really did care. But the pitching, they came down to pitching. I mean, like a lot of things, when you get to postseason, it was good pitching. And how you guys had to work around that. I think, it's been written about, Mason Miller and all that. But talk just a little bit about how tough it is to balance that bullpen, when you have the clubs on your case about using guys too much.
Yeah, it really is difficult, John. I mean, and that's just not a U.S. problem. Every country with major league arms in their bullpen is going through the same thing that we were going through. So, but I mean, you look at the Mason thing in the championship game, and D-Row got a lot of questions on why Mason wasn't used in the 9th of that game. Well, we're under very, very strict rules with clubs that pitchers can't get hot and then not come in the game. If they start warming up and they don't come in, they're down. So you have to be really careful about how you decide to get guys ready for games. So in the case of Mason Miller, we would have loved to, if it's a World Series or even an important regular season game, if we're in the bottom of the 9th, you're having the closer warm up in case we tie it or take the lead, they're going to be in the top of the 9th. We don't have that luxury because Mason can't get ready. If we don't take the lead or tie it up, Mason's burned. And that's the last thing we want to do is burn through Mason Miller and not use him in the championship game. So when Bryce hits that home run in the bottom of the 8th, we have 2 outs. We don't have time to get Mason ready right there to go in for the top of the 9th. So what we were hoping to do was extend that game. We get through the top of the 9th unscathed, and if we score in the bottom of the 9th, we win. If we don't, now Mason has a clean lane to come into the game in the top of the 10th. So there's so many different, and we went through all these scenarios pregame to, see what we were going to do. Say Bryce hits that home run with nobody out. Now Mason's got a clean inning, a clean 3 outs to get ready to come in the top of the ninth. So again, to your point, there's a ton of things we got to wrestle with, but that's not a U.S. problem. That's a problem for every team that has major league arms in their bullpen.
The one thing that gets unsaid in all of that, obviously, is that you had to weigh Mason Miller, who takes a little bit longer to get ready and comes in for a clean inning, versus Garrett Whitlock, who I think y'all's perspective was, this is a guy who can get ready quicker, and he had dealt throughout the tournament, and so that's why it was Whitlock who was the call with 2 outs as opposed to Miller. Is that correct?
Yeah, again, that's now you have to kind of think on your feet a little bit. You know, you try and go through all these scenarios pregame. We did it all the night before and all the morning of, but there is some element, just like any coach or manager will tell you in a major league season, there is an element of thinking on your feet a little bit. And the second that Bryce hits that homer, now we have to really see what's our best option right now. Right? Knowing that Mason probably wasn't going to be the option, you have to really say, now, how do we get a guy in there who's going to be super ready? And regarding Garrett Whitlock, I can't say enough about how great he pitched the entire tournament. He was probably our most consistent guy coming out of the pen. And he probably came in there with less than his best stuff, just through general fatigue from the tournament. But he still went out there, did everything he could to try and push us through the 9th inning. So a ton of credit goes his way for even being available to us in that situation, which was a really, really difficult spot to go into. And in an important game for mid-March, it was a huge spot for him. And I give him all the credit in the world for just taking it on.
So, Michael, you weren't with the club, obviously, for the start of the season in Philadelphia. It was the Michael Young Memorial Series between the Rangers and the Phillies, where you spent the first half of your last season in the big leagues. What were your takeaways from watching? I know you were probably in touch with Skip Schumacher and the front office. What were your takeaways off of this first weekend?
I mean, I think the resilience that we showed, it's a word that gets used a lot, but to try and understand what our club was going through maybe about an hour before game 2, right? We lose game 1 with, Nathan Eovaldi on the mound, and now you're going into game 2 thinking, all right, we want to get this one with Jake pitching, and Jacob deGrom, that is, and now he gets scratched, a little wind out of your sails, right? And then Jake Latz comes in there and is just unbelievably good against a really, really great Philly team. Gives us an opportunity to win that game. It goes a little haywire towards the end of the game, but again, they rebound, they absorb it, they rebound, they make adjustments, win that game, and then come out in a game where I think the Phillies record in home series last year was like 22-3, something ridiculous, where they played incredibly well at home. And for us to have an opportunity on a Sunday to come out and win a series, even though it's just game 3 of the season, to prove something to yourself that you can overcome a small injury, you're back against the wall in certain things, and then come out with a really, really convincing win on a Sunday out there is, our guys should be super proud of it. I know our staff was. Super pumped for Skip to get this first series win under his belt. And now we push forward and really, really try and build some more momentum heading in through the first month of the season.
Can you see, and again, we know you weren't around the team that much this spring. You were here for the 2 exhibition games against the Royals. I mean, have you seen the offensive approach change from last year? I mean, and again, it's a very small sample size, but just your early impressions about what you've seen offensively.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I don't think anyone ever questioned our talent offensively. We have guys who can hit. The biggest thing is making sure that we're doing things from an approach standpoint that allow that talent to come out. And I think that the one obvious example is you point to Andrew McCutcheon's homer. Gets behind in the count. That was obviously probably the biggest moment in the game. But gets behind in the count facing one of the top left-handed pitchers in the starters in the game. He throws him a back foot slider in the 1-2 count that he takes. I mean, he missed it. It was below the zone by, that much. And a really, really tough pitch to lay off of. He lays off it, fouls off another off-speed pitch, and then puts himself into a situation where he's seen some pitches, fouled them off, and then puts a great swing on a ball and hits a huge home run for us. It just speaks to how important it is to be able to not chase, put yourself in better counts as the at-bat builds, and be able to get a good swing off when it really does matter. So that's the biggest thing. If our guys can really, really have a good, collective, consistent approach at the plate, that talent that we spoke of is going to get a chance to come out on a more consistent basis.
But there's one question going into the season, or one of the questions going into the season was going to be, who's going to close for this team? And I did think it was, unfortunate that the first time that the Rangers had a save opportunity, things went a little bit crazy. Now, hats off to the team for coming back and winning that game. And Cutchin had a big hit in the 10th inning of that game on Saturday. But is this, how is this bullpen going to function in your mind?
They're going to try and go piece by piece and get outs. I mean, I can't give you a definitive answer on how it's exactly going to function. I think that Skip and the staff are going to be incredibly prepared in terms of matchups and do everything they can to rack up outs late in the game. Simple as that. So to sit there and say that, we have, went and signed a free agent closer to a big 3-year deal. Yeah, we didn't do that. We spent our dollars in other spots. The dollars that were made available to us, we spent in different spots. And I, CY and Ross and the rest of the guys in the front office deserve an incredible amount of credit for their creativity and their aggressiveness in spots where they knew they could do that. But regarding how it's going to work as the season goes on, I think that we're going to have to kind of, have a wait and see moment to that. I think we're going to start seeing which players step up. I think even though that you don't have these roles clearly defined right now, the great thing about it from a competition standpoint is it creates opportunity for guys to really step up and grab roles. So we're going to have to kind of wait and see on that one. But meanwhile, I have, everyone has complete trust in how the front office and how Skip and his staff are going to juggle this and put guys in good spots to succeed.
For me, it's I just want to talk a little bit about young pitching too here while we've got you. With Latz, Leiter, Rocker, and you've been around this organization a long time. It's been a while since the Rangers and Cole Winn, for that matter, have been able to develop young pitching. You've been able to see it now for several years as this has kind of improved. What are your thoughts about that, and how it's, again, you've been around. We used to have to go out and get guys to fill spots in rotation. By building your own guys, it really is a big advantage.
Huge advantage, right? I mean, I think that the organization deserves, again, from CY to Ross to our player development folks, deserve tons of credit, especially when you talk about Jack and Kumar. Jack was supposed to basically, if you read every article when he got drafted, was going to spend about 2 months in the minor leagues and come in and win Cy Youngs, which is insanely unfair, right? I mean, there's one Paul Skeens, right? So you look at what Jack did, gets drafted. He kind of does a lot of has some failure, gets hit a little bit, and he's got to make changes. And he completely buys in. Look at him now. He's a great example of a good young big league starter with an incredibly bright future, who's centerpiece of a really talented rotation. And the same thing with Rocker. You look at some of the guys that were on the draft board when he got taken with the third pick, and you look back, and it's a hell of a pick right now. So I think, again, the team deserves a ton of credit for where these guys are in their careers, and it's all needle up for every single one of them. So, developing your own pitching is such an important thing. You combine that with some really, really talented free agents that we have, and then one guy who's right smack in the middle as a big trade, and you have a chance for a really, really talented championship-style rotation, and that's what's been built here. So it's going to be really, really a ton of fun to see how it develops as the season goes on, but the young guys are in a really, really good spot. Great guys to learn from, and with an opportunity to go out and compete at a high level.
But in your 12 years as a special assistant here, and having a heavy involvement in decisions that get made, you've had a look at how the Rangers have changed their approach to pitching in general, right? Whether it's evaluation of talent, whether it's procurement of free agency talent. I think this organization has come a long way there. It's not just the idea that they signed Jacob deGrom and Nathan Eovaldi and that they used high first-round picks on pitchers. What do you think how has this organization changed how it approaches pitching, and what gets done overall to create a better pitching-centric organization?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is patience. I think everyone loves to talk about it, but it's really difficult to have patience when you look in Jack's case. Again, he's thought to get drafted and be in the big leagues almost immediately. doesn't work out that way. And all the while, the organization never lost faith in what this kid could ultimately become. At the end of the day, you want them to be ready to be really good the second they get to the big leagues. And in Jack's case, it took not even a long time, but compared to what people thought, it took a little longer. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So I think the biggest word is patience. I think that when you look at the draft process, both those guys were thought of to be, they had storied careers at an incredible program that was, renowned for their pitching development. And now we get them. And now the thing is, the draft part was the easy part. Now we have to develop them and give them an opportunity to be good. So I think the biggest word that is patience with our organization. They give guys some leeway to fail, to hit a couple speed bumps, and now they have to make good, solid adjustments in order to become the starters that they envision becoming.
Evan, go ahead. But I'm just saying we're getting close. Do you want to talk about the automatic ball strikes before we let Mike go here?
Sure. Mike, what do you think about bad umpires?
I mean, I'm not as tough on him as you are. I mean, Evan sends me every GIF in the world of a bad umpire call. It's unbelievable, man. I actually do love it, and I do have some opinions regarding it. I think that there was Evan, I think we're sharing some thoughts on this one. I think this is going to be really good to. Well, first of all, let me say that the majority of umpires are fantastic, right? They have a tough job, and they handle it with a lot of humility. But it's always one or two or three, man, that always make the news, right? It's the same as players too. Most players are good, but there's always a couple that are always, arguing over stupid things. So it goes the same way. But there was a quote from a former umpire recently, and he was talking about how the system now is going to be an embarrassment for umpires. No one wants to get humiliated in front of 40,000 people. What an absolutely stupid thing to say. I mean, give me a break. This thing is, then he also throws in the nugget of some computer nerd who doesn't know enough about the game. Yeah, I will take that person who invented the ABS system over bad calls all day long. And the thing is, too, is that if you talk to major league players, we all recognize that this game is hard, man. And people are very forgiving on when you mess up, provided there's a little humility and accountability, because we've all screwed up in this game. It's just a hard sport. And it's amazing how far a little, hey, my fault, I messed up, how far that goes. It is immediate forgiveness. Hey, we've all been there. Don't sweat it. We're fine. But I think that when you look at that quote from that former umpire, it created this culture of no humility, no accountability, pointing the finger, ripping off your mask, getting in people's faces. And now you have some umpires that are clearly kind of getting perturbed over a system that is clearly just designed to get calls right. I think that is, for those particular umpires, this is karma in the most beautiful way possible. Because if you had a problem with that, with getting embarrassed, guess what? Now you're going to get embarrassed. And the good umpires, they see it for what it is. They just want to get it right. And if you can tell, if they maybe now they can look at themselves as umpires and say, listen, I keep missing glove side strikes from left-handed sidearm pitchers. I'm just not getting a good look. Maybe I got to position myself better to get a better look at that pitch. That's what you'd want a good umpire to do. Look at their performance, see how they can make improvements. The same as any of us, right? The same as, a writer or a ball player, to try and see how you can become better at it. But I really hope that not only is it an improvement on balls and strikes, but just a general improvement of attitude from certain guys.
Yeah, there were, over the first weekend, there were several stories. Obviously, the biggest one was that C.B. Buckner had 8 calls overturned in his game with the Red Sox and the Reds. And it did seem to rattle him some, and may have, led to the eventual ejection of Alex Cora. I think I share the same view on this as you do, that this is there to help get things right. It's not there to embarrass umpires. It's there to help get calls right. And listen, even when we see the bulk of the challenges on the scoreboard, we're seeing guys miss by 1/10 of an inch. That's what they're missing by. And so I think everybody lives with that, and that's all fine. But now you do have a tool to help you get better. And, in the case of C.B. Buckner, I hope he uses that after yesterday to get better. But I will also say, Michael, that umpires have had this system available. They just haven't had it play out in front of everybody. They've had this system available to evaluate themselves for several years, ever since the strike zone box came in. And I think to your point, the most important thing here is that hopefully now there is some accountability publicly, and that these guys try and just get better at their jobs. It's not that they're bad at their jobs, but there is opportunity to get better.
Sure. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's just general, like if a guy, in CB's case last night, he gets, say the Suarez at bat where it's 2 pitches and 1 at bat. If he kind of like looked at it with, say, the second one, the crowd's going crazy, by the way, which is always a good thing. You want the crowd to be engaged, and now they are for another reason. If CB had like a little half grin and kind of just went like, and can you imagine how much people would appreciate that, right? They got it right. He kind of said, my bad. That would be just such a great way to sort of handle these things. But again, I'm hopeful like you are that this thing is just a great thing for the game. I love it personally. I think it's incredible. You see players also like how well they know the strike zone. Like I think Randy Rosarino challenged a call. It was strike 3. He's literally taking off his stuff, throwing it, knows it's ball 4. It missed by this much, and he knew it was ball 4. So again, we also, no one is sitting there saying the umpires are bad at their jobs. If I were to go back there right now, I'd be calling, like, I don't even know what I'd be calling back there. It's a very difficult job. You're trying to judge pitchers that are going really hard with inconsistent movement. You have to understand, like, not only how the ball moves, but you got to understand that, one guy's sinker moves more than the other. Aaron Judge is 6'8". Jose Altuve is not. There's so many different things that you have to consider when calling balls and strikes. It's a tough gig. So just a little humility and accountability to go a long way.
Well, that's changed so much from the days of Ken Kaiser and people like it was ridiculous back in the 70s and 80s. Yeah. But anyway, we appreciate your time. We'll have you on again because Evan's probably got 100 more questions, but I'm sure you'll be hearing from him daily. But we appreciate it. I'm sure we'll see you around the next month or so. You'll be around, probably coming into Arlington at some point. So it's good to catch up, and thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks to Michael Young for another super quality interview. He is the greatest, and can talk about anything. We're
Stop
grateful.
Fawning over the guy, John.
Privileged to have him around. So anyway, this week's Archives in Arlington, there was a big to-do when Jake Berger hit home runs in the first 2 games of the season in Philadelphia. So we're coming up on the 15th anniversary of Nelson Cruz tying a Major League record. It was April 4th, 2011, when Cruz hit a home run in his 4th consecutive game to start the season, which ties the current Major League record. It only been done twice at that point by Willie Mays in 1971 and Mark McGwire in 1998. Since been done 3 more times. Former Ranger Chris Davis in 2013, Trevor Story with the Rockies in 2016. He actually had 6 home runs in the first 4 games of the season, and Christian Yelich with the Brewers in 2019. But Evan, Nelson Cruz is a name for Ranger fans that, you look at 2011, Game 6 of the World Series. You look at 2013, the 50-game biogenesis suspension. But if you asked Ranger fans who hit the most home runs for the team in a 3-year span from 2009 to 2011, I think most people would probably answer Josh Hamilton, but it was actually Nelson Cruz. And he had so many late-inning home runs as a clutch player for the team. And the Rangers don't win without Nelson Cruz in those years.
Oh, and let's not forget the walk-off home run in the postseason.
Right,
as well.
Game 2 against the Tigers. Yeah, he had a massive LCS.
It was 2011 was going to be a storybook season for him, and unfortunately, it's remembered for that misplay in Game 6 of the World Series. And it is a complicated legacy. He should be remembered more warmly because he did deliver here. He was a great trade acquisition, who was a late bloomer. And again, this was a guy who was, even after he got here, was DFA'd, went unclaimed, went back to the minor leagues, and then bloomed at the age of 28, 29. So, and Nelson has gone on to write a pretty nice legacy in baseball.
Incredible, yeah.
And is now a very respected voice, especially for Latin American baseball. has a very strong. He was the GM of the Dominican team this year. Has a very strong presence in MLB offices. We need to have him on the show. I think I'd really like to have him on the show. And I got to tell you, John, I had forgotten that he had hit 4 home runs in all 4 of those in those first 4 games, because that team was so good, and there was just so much going on. It all kind of blurred together for him.
Yeah, it was. And the Rangers got off to a great start in 2011, and kind of went from there to win the pennant. But you mentioned his legacy, and I was trying to think the other day of a Ranger player that had a really storied career here, and then went on for, he left here in 2013. We played another 10 years. Made a bunch more All-Star teams, hit 40 home runs 4 times in a span of 6 years.
He took that selfie at the All-Star game with Joe West.
Right, that's correct. But a guy that had an incredible career, went on to win the Roberto Clemente Award for community service. And you're right, it was a complicated legacy in Texas. But like I said, Nelson Cruz is somebody that's going to be remembered in Ranger annals for a long time. And again, as we tape this, the White Sox, their rookie Japanese player Munetaka Murakami is homered in the first 3 games of the season. So we'll see if he can tie that record. But it's a pretty exclusive list of guys that have hit home runs in the first 4 games of a season.
So I'll end the Nelson Cruz legacy question portion of the show with this question, John. Is he a Ranger Hall of Famer? Does he need to be considered as a Ranger Hall of Famer, or does the suspension make it, does it kind of nullify him?
It is a complicated legacy. He's not really in a lot of lists for top 10 in club history because he didn't play here long enough. But like a lot of guys who fall into that category, and we could have this argument all day long on, and we've tried to keep it, pretty exclusive. But like I've told you we've had this discussion. We need to, in the next year or whatever, kind of clarify where the Hall of Fame is going. So we'll see maybe I'll retire before they have to do that. So
aren't you retired already? Oh, you're not retired as historian. I forgot.
I'm semi-retired as I sit here in our little archives closet today. So that will do it for this week's episode of Sports Day Rangers. Thanks to Michael Young again for jumping on with us. And the Rangers open the home season here today, actually, as this podcast will drop on Friday against Cincinnati. So many interleague games to start the season. It's crazy. But, Evan, have a great time in Baltimore. Let's see what happens over the next few days.
Going to try and swim over to Jimmy's and grab another one of those 1-pound crab cakes that we shared during the AL Division Series in 23.
Yeah, those were big crab cakes. What were those called? I can't even remember the name. It's
the Boss.
The Boss crab cake, yeah, which you managed to finish off by yourself. So I'm John Blake.
And I'm Evan Grant.
And we'll see you next week.